The cargo bay of station Kepler 442 was cold and empty when Yune first arrived. She stepped off the Veltharian transport ship with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small bag of basic supplies. The ship's captain would not even look at her as he pushed her toward the airlock. "This is where you stay now," he said in their native language. His voice was flat and emotionless. "You brought this shame on yourself." Yune said nothing. What could she say? In the eyes of her people, she had committed the worst crime possible. At 847 years old, she was far too old to be carrying a child. Veltharian law was clear about this. Only young females between 200 and 400 years could have babies. Anyone older was breaking the sacred rules of genetic purity. The airlock sealed behind her with a soft hiss. She was alone now on a space station that felt like the edge of the universe. Through the thick windows, she could see stars scattered across the darkness like tiny diamonds. They were beautiful, but they also reminded her how far she was from home. Station Kepler 442 was a trading post where different alien species came to buy and sell goods. It was neutral territory, which meant no single government controlled it. This made it a safe place for outcasts like her. But safe did not mean welcome. Yune's large belly made walking difficult. Her people were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and long fingers, but pregnancy had changed her body in ways that made her feel awkward and heavy. Every step was hard work, and she had to stop often to catch her breath. She found an empty storage room in the lower decks of the station. It was dark and dusty, but it was private. The metal walls were cold to the touch, and there was barely enough space for her to lie down. But it would have to do. She had nowhere else to go. Days passed slowly. Yune ate very little because her supplies were running low. She had brought some Veltharian food tablets, but they would not last long. She was too proud to ask for help from the other beings on the station. In her mind, she deserved this punishment. She had broken the law, and now she must face the consequences alone. The baby inside her belly moved sometimes, especially at night when everything was quiet. These movements reminded her why she was here. The pregnancy had been a surprise. At her age, she thought it was impossible. But life had found a way, as it often did. Her people did not see it that way. When the medical scanners detected the pregnancy during her routine health check, the authorities acted quickly. They stripped her of her citizenship, took away her job as a xenobiologist, and removed her from Veltharian space. All of this happened in less than a week. "You are no longer one of us," the High Council had told her. "Your genetic corruption ends here. You will not poison our bloodline with your aged cells." Yune had tried to explain that the baby seemed healthy according to all the tests, but they would not listen. Rules were rules, and rules could not be broken. This was the Veltharian way. Now, sitting alone in her cold storage room, she wondered if they were right. Maybe she was selfish for wanting this child. Maybe she should have taken the medicine they offered to end the pregnancy. But something deep inside her had refused to give up. The baby felt like a gift, even if the rest of the galaxy saw it as a curse. The station was always busy with traders and travelers. Yune could hear their voices and footsteps echoing through the corridors above her hiding place. Sometimes she recognized the languages: Andromedan clicks, Rigelian whistles, or the deep hums of the Centauri merchants. But most often she heard humans speaking in their strange, musical tongue. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only discovered space travel about 50 years ago, but they had spread quickly across many worlds. Other species found them interesting but unpredictable. They seemed to make friends easily with anyone they met. One human in particular caught her attention. She had seen him through the small window of her room, working in the cargo bay below. He was young by human standards, probably in his 30s. His black hair was always messy, and he wore the blue uniform of station maintenance workers. His name tag said Dongmin in both human letters and galactic standard symbols. What made him different was how he treated everyone around him. Yune watched him help elderly traders carry heavy boxes. She saw him share his lunch with hungry travelers who had no money. He smiled at everyone, even the grumpiest aliens who just wanted to get their business done and leave. Sometimes Dongmin would stop his work and look around the cargo bay as if he was searching for something. His eyes would move across the empty corners and unused storage areas. Yune always hid when this happened, but she wondered if he somehow knew she was there. Her food ran out on the 10th day. Yune sat in her room feeling weak and dizzy. The baby had been very active lately, which made her even more tired. She knew she needed help, but asking for it felt impossible. She was Veltharian. Her people were proud and independent. They did not beg. But as night fell and the station grew quiet, she began to think about the baby. Did her pride matter more than the life growing inside her? Was she being brave or just stubborn? Through her small window, she could see Dongmin finishing his work in the cargo bay. He moved slowly, carefully putting away tools and checking that everything was secure for the night. There was something peaceful about the way he worked, as if he found joy in even the smallest tasks. Yunai pressed her hand against her belly and felt the baby kick, strong and determined, just like its mother. Maybe that was enough. Maybe being strong meant knowing when to accept help from others, but not tonight. Tonight she would endure as her people always had. Alone, proud and unbroken. Tomorrow might be different, but tonight was hers to face in silence. Dongmin noticed the missing food from the storage lockers on his third day of leaving it there. Someone was taking the nutrition bars and water bottles he had been placing in the old maintenance area. He had suspected someone was hiding in the lower decks for weeks now. Little signs told the story. A door that was slightly more open than usual, footprints in the dust, and the feeling that someone was watching him work. He did not mind that the food was disappearing. Actually, it made him happy to know that whoever was hiding was at least eating something. The station had many visitors, and not all of them had money or friends to help them. Dongmin had learned long ago that sometimes the kindest thing to do was help without asking questions. His grandmother Bo-Ra had taught him this lesson when he was young. She used to make extra rice and soup every day, then leave it outside their door in small containers. When Dongmin asked why, she would say, "You never know who might be hungry tonight. It cost us nothing to share, but it might save someone's life." The memory made him smile as he arranged fresh supplies in the same hiding spot. Today he added some human fruit that was supposed to be good for pregnant women. He had a feeling about who might be taking the food, though he had only caught glimpses of blue skin and a heavy, awkward way of walking. The next morning, Dongmin found something that surprised him. Next to where he had left the food, someone had placed a small piece of metal. It was shaped into a beautiful flower with delicate petals and leaves. The work was incredibly detailed and precise. Only someone with scientific training could have made something so perfect. Over the following days, more gifts appeared. A tiny sculpture of a bird, a geometric pattern that seemed to glow in the light, and a miniature version of the station itself. Each piece was a work of art, created from scrap metal and broken parts that could be found around the maintenance areas. Dongmin understood. Whoever was taking his food was trying to pay for it. This person had pride and did not want to accept charity. The gifts were beautiful, but they also made him sad. They showed how desperate someone must be to hide in the cold, empty parts of the station. He decided to learn more about his mysterious neighbor. During his lunch breaks, he would sit quietly in the cargo bay and watch. His patience was rewarded when he finally saw her clearly through a gap in the storage containers. She was Veltharian, which explained the blue skin and tall, thin body. But this Veltharian was different from the traders who sometimes visited the station. She was older and very pregnant. Her clothes were simple and worn, and she moved like someone who was tired and in pain. Dongmin had worked with Veltharians before. They were usually proud, formal people who kept to themselves. They had strict rules about everything, especially about their families and children. Seeing one alone and hiding like this was very unusual. He researched Veltharian culture that night using the station's computer system. What he learned made him angry and sad at the same time. Veltharians had laws about when women could have children. Anyone who broke these laws was cast out of their society completely. They called it genetic corruption and treated it like the worst crime possible. The woman hiding in his cargo bay was not a criminal. She was just someone who had gotten pregnant at the wrong time according to her people's rules. Now she was suffering alone because of laws that made no sense to human thinking. Dongmin increased the amount of food he left, and started including things that would be especially good for pregnant women. He added vitamins, soft fruits, and warm blankets. He also left a small medical scanner that could check the baby's health. For several days, the woman did not take the new supplies. The food and blankets remained untouched, and more metal sculptures appeared in their place. It was clear she was refusing anything that seemed like charity. Finally, Dongmin decided to try a different approach. Instead of leaving supplies, he left a note written in Galactic Standard language. The message was simple. "These are not gifts. They are payments for your beautiful art. I would like to buy more if you are willing to trade." The next day, everything was gone, including the note. In its place was a larger sculpture, a human figure reaching out to help another person who was falling. The detail was amazing, and the emotion it conveyed made Dongmin's chest tight with feeling. But it was also a message. The woman knew he was human, and she understood that he was trying to help her. The sculpture showed her gratitude, but also her fear of accepting assistance. This pattern continued for 2 weeks. Dongmin would leave food and supplies, always with notes explaining they were payment for art. The woman would take what she needed and leave increasingly complex sculptures in return. Through these silent exchanges, they began to know each other without ever speaking. Dongmin learned that she was intelligent, creative, and incredibly skilled with her hands. The sculptures showed scientific knowledge and artistic vision that impressed him more each day. He began to display them in his small quarters, where they filled the space with beauty and mystery. The woman learned that the human was patient, kind, and persistent. His notes were always polite and encouraging. He never demanded to meet her or asked personal questions. He simply offered help and respected her need for privacy. But this careful balance was broken when the station's emergency alarms began to sound one morning. All personnel were required to report to safety stations for a drill that tested the life support systems. The alarms were loud and frightening, designed to move people quickly in a real emergency. Dongmin was helping direct confused travelers to the correct safety areas when he heard a different sound underneath the sirens. It was a cry of pain, coming from the direction of the lower storage decks. He ran toward the sound, ignoring the safety protocols that told him to report to his assigned station. In the maintenance area where he had been leaving food, he found the Veltharian woman collapsed on the floor. She was conscious but clearly in distress, one hand pressed against her large belly. "Help," she whispered in heavily accented Galactic Standard. "Please help." Dongmin did not hesitate. He scooped her up in his arms, surprised by how light she was despite her pregnancy. Her blue skin was pale and cold to the touch, and he could feel her shaking with weakness or fear. "It's okay," he said as he carried her toward the medical bay. "You're going to be fine. I know a good doctor." The woman tried to protest, speaking rapid Veltharian words he could not understand. But she was too weak to struggle, and something in his voice seemed to calm her fears. As they moved through the corridors, Dongmin realized this was the moment everything would change. The careful distance they had maintained was broken. Now they would have to face each other as real people, with all the complications that would bring. But looking down at her frightened face, he knew he had made the right choice. His grandmother had always said that when someone needed help, you helped them first and worried about the consequences later. Today, he finally understood what she meant. Dr. Hyun-woo was finishing his morning reports when Dongmin burst through the medical bay doors carrying the Veltharian woman. The doctor took one look at her pale blue skin and weak condition, then immediately directed Dongmin to place her on the examination table. "How long has she been like this?" Hyun-woo asked as he began checking her vital signs with his medical scanner. "I don't know," Dongmin admitted. "She's been hiding in the storage areas for weeks. I've been leaving food for her, but I think she's been refusing most help." Hyun-woo frowned as he read the scanner results. "She's severely malnourished and her body is under extreme stress. The baby appears healthy, but if this continues, both mother and child could be in serious danger." Yune tried to sit up on the table, her large eyes moving between the two humans. "I cannot pay," she said in careful Galactic Standard. "I have no money, no citizenship. You should not waste your medicines on me." "Nobody is asking for payment," Hyun-woo said gently. "Medical care is free for anyone who needs it on this station." "Nothing is free," Yune replied, her voice stronger now but still filled with suspicion. "Everything has a cost. What do you want from me?" Dongmin stepped closer to the examination table. "We want you to be healthy. That's all." Yune stared at him for a long moment. "You are the one who has been leaving food. I recognized your scent on the packages." "Yes," Dongmin said simply. "I was worried about you." "Why?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "You do not know me. I am nothing to you. Less than nothing. I am an exile, a genetic criminal according to my people's laws." Dongmin pulled up a chair and sat down so he was at eye level with her. "My grandmother raised me after my parents died in a transport accident. She used to say that family isn't about blood or laws or rules. It's about who chooses to stay when things get difficult." "I am not your family," Yune said. but her voice was quieter now. No, Dongmin agreed. But you're someone who needs help and I can provide it. That seems like enough reason to me. Hyunwoo had been listening while he prepared an IV drip with nutrients and vitamins. The question is, will you accept our help? Because right now both you and your baby need medical attention. Yune was quiet for several minutes. The humans waited patiently, not pushing her to decide quickly. Finally she spoke. If I accept your help, I must find a way to earn it. I will not be a burden who takes without giving back. What kind of work can you do? Hyunwoo asked. I was a xenobiologist before my exile, Yune said. I studied the biology and medicine of different alien species. I specialized in genetic analysis and cross-species medical treatment. Hyunwoo's eyes lit up with interest. We could use someone with that expertise. This station sees dozens of different species every week, and sometimes I have to guess at the best treatment for non-human patients. Would you be willing to work as a medical consultant? You would trust me with that responsibility? Yune asked, surprised. Your people might think your genetics are corrupted, Dongmin said. But that doesn't change what you know or how smart you are. Over the following weeks, Yune slowly integrated into life on the station. She worked in the medical bay every day, helping Hyunwoo treat patients from various species. Her knowledge was incredible. She could identify genetic markers, predict allergic reactions, and suggest treatments that Hyunwoo had never considered. The work gave her purpose and helped her feel valuable again. For the first time since her exile, she was using her skills to help others instead of feeling ashamed of her condition. Dongmin visited the medical bay every day during his lunch breaks. At first, he claimed he was just checking on her health, but soon it became clear he enjoyed their conversations. Yuni found herself looking forward to these visits. The human had a way of seeing the positive side of everything, and his optimism was contagious. How can you be so cheerful all the time? She asked him one afternoon. Don't you ever feel angry about unfair things? Of course I do, Dongmin said. But my grandmother taught me that anger is like holding a hot coal. It hurts you more than the person you're angry at. It's better to use that energy to make things better instead. Yuni had never heard wisdom like this. Veltharian culture focused on rules, order, and genetic purity. Emotions were seen as weaknesses to be controlled. But Dongmin talked about feelings as if they were tools that could be used to build something good. Their peaceful routine was interrupted when sensors detected a Veltharian patrol ship approaching the station. Station Chief Ilnam called an emergency meeting with his senior staff, including Hyunwoo. The Veltharians are requesting permission to search the station, Ilnam explained. They claim they're looking for stolen property, but I suspect they're really after someone. Hyunwoo immediately thought of Yunai. What do we do? Officially, we have to allow the search if they have proper authority, Ilnam said. But we also have the right to protect any being who has requested sanctuary on our station. When they told Yunai about the approaching ship, her face went pale with fear. They have come for me, she said quietly. I should go with them. If I don't, they might cause trouble for the station. Absolutely not, Dongmin said firmly. You're under our protection now. You don't understand, Yunai protested. Veltharians do not give up easily. They will find legal ways to force you to surrender me. Then we'll find legal ways to keep you safe, Ilnam said when he joined the conversation. This station operates under Galactic Alliance neutrality laws. We don't have to hand over anyone who hasn't committed a crime against Alliance members. But I have committed a crime according to Veltharian law, Yune said. Pregnancy isn't a crime under Alliance law, Hyunwoo pointed out. And you haven't hurt anyone or stolen anything. You're just guilty of being older than your people think you should be when you got pregnant. The Veltharian ship docked at the station 2 hours later. Commander Kethmar and 3 armed soldiers came aboard and demanded to speak with station leadership. Their uniforms were pristine white with silver decorations, and they carried themselves with the formal dignity typical of their species. Ilnam met them in the main conference room, with Hyunwoo and several other staff members present as witnesses. We are searching for a genetic criminal named Yun-A, Kethmar announced. She was exiled from Veltharian space but may have illegally entered this station. What crime is she accused of? Ilnam asked. Reproductive violation. She became pregnant beyond the legal age limit, corrupting our genetic standards. That's not a crime under Galactic Alliance law, Ilnam replied calmly. This station operates under Alliance authority, not Veltharian law. Kethmar's expression hardened. She is Veltharian property. We have the right to reclaim our citizens. She's not your citizen anymore, Ilnam said. You exiled her, remember? That means she's free to seek sanctuary wherever she chooses. The meeting continued for hours, with both sides citing different laws and treaties. Meanwhile, Dongmin stayed with Yunai in the medical bay, trying to keep her calm as her stress levels spiked. Whatever happens, he told her, we won't let them take you against your will. Yunai looked at him with tears in her large eyes. Why are you doing this? Why risk trouble with the Veltharian government for someone like me? Dongmin took her hand in his. Because that's what families do. They protect each other. Outside, the legal battle was just beginning. The legal standoff had lasted 3 days when Yunai's labor began. She was in the medical bay helping Hyunwoo treat a Regelian trader's injured tentacle when the first contraction hit. The pain was so sudden and intense that she dropped the medical scanner she was holding. The baby, she gasped, pressing both hands against her belly. It's coming now. Hyunwoo immediately guided her to the delivery room while his assistant Yoonji prepared the medical equipment. The timing could not have been worse. Commander Kethmar and his soldiers were still on the station, threatening legal action if Yunai was not surrendered to them. Dongmin was in the cargo bay when the emergency call came through his communicator. He dropped everything and ran to the medical bay, arriving just as another contraction made Yunai cry out in pain. How can I help? He asked Hyunwoo. Keep her calm and focused, the doctor replied as he checked the baby's position. This is going to be difficult. Veltharian births are complicated, and the stress she's been under makes everything more dangerous. Outside the medical bay, news of the labor had spread quickly through the station. Many of the human crew members had grown fond of Yunai during her weeks working there. She was kind, intelligent, and incredibly knowledgeable about medical science. The idea of the Veltharians taking her away had made everyone upset. Commander Kethmar learned about the birth from his surveillance of station communications. He and his soldiers marched to the medical bay and demanded entry. The medical bay is off-limits during emergencies, Station Chief Ilnam told them, blocking their path with several security officers. That criminal is giving birth to corrupted offspring, Kethmar said coldly. Both she and the child must be removed before they contaminate this station. The only contamination here is your attitude, Ilnam replied. No one is going anywhere until the birth is safely completed. Inside the delivery room, Yunai's labor was progressing rapidly, but something was wrong. The baby's heartbeat was irregular and Yunai was losing too much blood. I need to perform an emergency procedure, Hyunwoo told Dongmin. The baby is in distress and if we wait much longer, we could lose them both. Yunai grabbed Dongmin's hand as another contraction hit. If something happens to me, she whispered, promise you'll protect my baby. Don't let them take her. Nothing is going to happen to you, Dongmin said firmly. Both of you are going to be fine. But privately, he was terrified. He had never seen Hyunwoo look so worried during a medical procedure. Yeonji worked quickly to assist the doctor while Dongmin held Yunai's hand and tried to keep her conscious. The room was filled with the sounds of medical equipment and Yunai's labored breathing. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, they heard a new sound, the cry of a newborn baby. It's a girl, Hyunwoo announced, carefully lifting the tiny infant and checking her vital signs. She's small but appears healthy. Yunai started crying with relief and exhaustion. Dongmin felt tears in his own eyes as he watched the doctor clean and examine the baby. But as Hyunwoo continued his examination, his expression changed from relief to amazement. This is incredible, he murmured, running additional scans with his medical equipment. What's wrong? Yunai asked weakly. Nothing's wrong, Hyunwoo said, but this baby is extraordinary. Her brain development is unlike anything I've ever seen. The neural pathways are incredibly complex, almost like she has enhanced cognitive abilities. He showed them the brain scans on his medical display. Even to Dongmin's untrained eyes, the patterns looked different from normal Veltharian brain activity. What does this mean? Dongmin asked. I think it means the Veltharians were wrong about genetic corruption, Hyunwoo said quietly. Instead of weakening the species, late-life pregnancy might actually be producing enhanced individuals. Yunai held her daughter for the first time, marveling at the baby's bright, alert eyes. I want to name her Sujin, she said. It means precious gift in both human and Veltharian languages. The moment was interrupted by shouting from outside the medical bay. Commander Kethmar was demanding immediate access, and his voice was getting louder and more threatening. "I'm going to have to let them in eventually," Ilnam said through the communication system, "but I'll give you as much time as possible." Hyunwoo quickly completed his medical documentation, while Yoonji helped Yunei get cleaned up and comfortable. Dongmin stayed close to both mother and baby, ready to protect them if necessary. When the Veltharians finally entered the room, they expected to find a weak exile and her defective child. Instead, they found Yunei sitting up confidently with Sujin in her arms, surrounded by human medical staff who clearly cared about them both. Kethmar approached the bed cautiously. Like all Veltharians, he was tall and thin with pale blue skin, but his face was harder and more angular than Yunei's. His silver uniform marked him as a high-ranking military officer. "You will surrender the child immediately," he ordered. "It must be examined by Veltharian medical authorities to determine the extent of genetic damage." "There is no genetic damage," Hyunwoo said, stepping between Kethmar and the bed. "I've completed a full medical examination. Both mother and child are perfectly healthy." "Impossible," Kethmar replied. "Reproduction at such an advanced age always results in genetic corruption." "Maybe that's what you've been told," Dongmin said, "but it's not what the evidence shows." Hyunwoo handed Kethmar a datapad containing Sujin's medical scans. "See for yourself. This child's genetic markers and brain development are not corrupted. They're enhanced." Kethmar studied the data with growing confusion. Everything he had been taught about late-life pregnancy suggested the baby should be weak and mentally deficient. But these scans showed the opposite. As if sensing the attention, baby Sujin opened her eyes and looked directly at the Veltharian commander. For a moment, something passed between them, a sense of understanding that seemed impossible for a newborn to possess. Kethmar stepped backward, clearly shaken by the experience. "This changes nothing," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "The law is the law. Maybe it's time to question whether the law is right," Yunai said quietly. She was exhausted from the birth, but her voice was steady and strong. "Maybe what you call corruption is actually evolution." Kethmar looked at the baby again, then at the humans who had risked diplomatic problems to protect a Veltharian exile. Something in his rigid worldview was beginning to crack. "I must report this to the High Council," he said finally. "They will decide what to do." After the Veltharians left, Dongmin sat beside Yunei's bed and gently touched Sujin's tiny hand. The baby gripped his finger with surprising strength. "What happens now?" Yunei asked. "Now we take care of each other," Dongmin replied. "All of us together." For the first time since her exile began, Yunei felt hope for the future. 2 years had passed since Sujin's birth, and Station Kepler 442 had transformed into something nobody could have imagined. What started as a simple trading post had become the galaxy's first official sanctuary for genetic outcasts and social exiles. Yunei stood in the newly expanded medical bay, watching her daughter play with a group of children from 6 different species. Sujin was walking now, her steps quick and confident as she moved between her diverse group of friends. At 2 years old, she already showed the enhanced abilities that Dr. Hyunwoo had detected at birth. The most remarkable thing about Sujin was her ability to communicate with any species, even those that used completely different methods than spoken language. She could understand the color patterns of chromatoid children, respond to the ultrasonic calls of Delphinian youngsters, and even seemed to sense the emotional states of empathic species like the betazoids. "She's incredible," said Yoonji, who had become the head pediatric nurse for the sanctuary's growing population of children. "I've never seen anything like her communication abilities." Yunei smiled as she watched Sujin help a shy Andromedan child join the playgroup. "The Veltharians called her corrupted genetics. I think they were afraid of what she might become." The sanctuary had grown far beyond what anyone expected. Word had spread through underground networks across the galaxy about a place where genetic outcasts could find safety and acceptance. Mixed heritage individuals, late-life pregnancies, genetic mutations, and other biological variations that were rejected by their home species began arriving weekly. Dong Min had been promoted to Director of Sanctuary Operations, a position that required him to coordinate with multiple galactic governments and species councils. He worked long hours, but he always made time to have dinner with Yunei and Sujin every evening. Tonight was special because they were expecting an important visitor. Commander Kethmar had requested permission to return to the station, but this time he was coming alone and without weapons. "Are you nervous about seeing him again?" Dongmin asked Yunei as they prepared for the meeting. "A little," she admitted. "But I'm also curious." His messages suggested he has something important to discuss. When Kethmar arrived, he looked different from the rigid military officer who had tried to arrest Yunei 2 years earlier. His uniform was still perfectly clean, but his posture was less formal, and his expression showed uncertainty rather than cold authority. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," he said to Station Chief Ilnam and the Sanctuary leadership team. "What brings you back to our station?" Ilnam asked. Kethmar looked directly at Yunei before answering. "I came to apologize and to ask for your help." The room was quiet as everyone waited for him to continue. "After I returned to Veltharian space with my report about Sujin, the High Council ordered a complete review of our genetic purity laws. They wanted to understand how a corrupted pregnancy could produce a child with enhanced abilities." He paused and pulled out a datapad containing official documents. "What they discovered has changed everything. Our scientists found evidence that late-life pregnancies actually produce genetic advantages in about 30% of cases. Enhanced intelligence, improved empathic abilities, stronger immune systems, traits that could benefit our entire species." Yunei stared at him in shock. "You mean my exile was based on incorrect science?" "Worse than that," Kethmar replied. "Our laws were based on ancient prejudices that we disguised as genetic science. We've been destroying our own evolutionary advancement for centuries." Dongmin leaned forward in his chair. "What does this mean for Yunei and the other Veltharian exiles?" "The High Council has voted to abolish the reproductive age restrictions," Kethmar said. "All exiles are being offered full reinstatement of their citizenship and compensation for their suffering." "And what about the people here?" Yunei asked. "This sanctuary has become home to hundreds of beings from dozens of species. They can't just be abandoned." Kethmar nodded. "That's why I'm here. The Veltharian government wants to officially sponsor this sanctuary. We want to help expand it into a permanent research station dedicated to studying genetic diversity and its benefits." Station Chief Ilnam looked surprised. "You want to fund our operation?" "More than that," Kethmar replied. "We want to create a formal alliance. Multiple species have been watching what you've accomplished here. The Andromedans, Rigelians, and even the Centauri Federation are interested in supporting research into genetic diversity." Over the following months, the sanctuary expanded rapidly with official backing from several galactic governments. New research facilities were built to study the unique abilities displayed by genetically diverse individuals. The medical bay became a teaching hospital, where doctors from across the galaxy came to learn about cross-species medicine. Yunei was appointed as the chief scientific advisor, leading research teams that included some of the brightest minds from dozens of species. Her work focused on understanding how genetic diversity could benefit entire populations rather than weakening them. Dongmin continued to oversee daily operations, but his role had evolved into something like a galactic ambassador for acceptance and inclusion. He traveled to different worlds, giving presentations about the sanctuary's success and encouraging other species to reconsider their own genetic prejudices. Sujin grew up at the center of this diverse community, surrounded by beings who valued her differences rather than fearing them. By age 4, she was already showing signs of abilities that no single species possessed. She could process information like a Vulcan, communicate empathically like a Betazoid, and solve complex problems with creativity that reminded everyone of human ingenuity. One evening, as the family sat together watching ships arrive and depart from the station, Sujin asked a question that surprised them. "Mama, why did your people send you away for having me?" Yunei considered how to explain such a complex situation to a young child. "They were afraid that you would be different from them. Sometimes people fear things they don't understand. But different is good," Sujin said with the simple wisdom of childhood. "All my friends are different from each other, and that's what makes playing together fun." Dongmin smiled at the child's perspective. "You're absolutely right. Different is good. Will other people learn that too?" Sujin asked. "I think they're starting to," Yunei replied. "Thanks to places like this station, people are beginning to understand that diversity makes everyone stronger." As if to illustrate her point, a new transport ship was docking at that moment. Through the viewing window, they could see a group of mixed heritage families disembarking, beings who had been rejected by their homeworlds but would find acceptance and purpose here, Commander. Kethmar had remained on the station as the Veltharian liaison to the Sanctuary Project. He often joined the family for their evening meals, and over time he had become something like an uncle to Sujin. Tonight he brought news from the Veltharian homeworld. The first generation of unrestricted pregnancies has begun, he reported. Early results suggest that about 40% are showing enhanced traits similar to Sujin's. That's wonderful, Yune said. But what about the social acceptance? Are people ready for these changes? It's happening slowly, Kethmar admitted. Change is difficult for any society, but having proof that diversity creates strength makes the argument much easier. Years continued to pass, and the Sanctuary Station became a model for a new kind of galactic community. Species that had never worked together before found common ground in their shared commitment to acceptance and scientific advancement. Sujin grew into a remarkable young woman who could bridge differences between species that had been enemies for centuries. Her unique abilities allowed her to serve as a translator not just of languages, but of entire ways of thinking and perceiving the universe. On her 10th birthday, she made an announcement that surprised everyone. I want to travel to all the worlds where people are still afraid of genetic differences, she said. I want to show them that different doesn't mean dangerous. Dongmin looked at Yune, seeing both pride and concern in her expression. That's a big responsibility, he said to Sujin. Are you sure you're ready for it? I've been getting ready my whole life, she replied with confidence that reminded him of her mother. This is what I was born to do. As they stood together looking out at the stars, Dongmin reflected on how much had changed since that day he first noticed someone hiding in the storage areas. What had begun as simple human kindness had grown into a movement that was transforming how species across the galaxy thought about genetics, family, and acceptance. Yunai took his hand and squeezed it gently. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For showing me that exile was just the beginning of a better story? Dongmin smiled, thinking about his grandmother's words about chosen family. Looking at Sujin and all the diverse beings who now called the station home, he realized that family had grown far beyond anything Bora could have imagined, but she would have been proud of how her lesson about sharing food with hungry strangers had eventually fed an entire galaxy's hunger for acceptance and belonging.